It's Spoilerin time, folks. This is where we take all the hard work of our other show, Cordkillers, where we figure out how to watch things, and then we watch them and talk about them here. This week, we will be talking about 2521, Season 1, Episode 3, Rick and Morty, Season 6, Episode 7, and The White Lotus, Season 2, Episode 4. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Heck yeah, dude. Where do we begin this delicious, delightful feast?
Let's dig in with The White Lotus, Season 2, Episode 4, The Aftermath. We've got Daphne taking, what's her name? Aubrey Plaza? Harper off to a secret getaway, making her stay the night and divulging a little too much. And then, of course, we have their various husbands, Ethan and... I keep trying to remember names and I'm really bad at it, but the husbands engage
jet ski bros
in some debauchery, although Ethan doesn't seem to have. He seems to have backed out, and it's all Cameron, and yet they didn't clean up all the evidence, even if it was Cameron. And so Harper finds the evidence, sort of hints around like what really happened. Are you going to giving him a chance to tell the truth without forcing him to know she knows? And he doesn't say anything. Really, this episode is a lot of planting of seeds, as well as our first, maybe not death, but certainly our first hint of mortality with the piano player keeling over.
Oh yeah, I don't think is our murder.
No, or it certainly won't be our only murder.
He didn't die. He took Molly and a Viagra.
Right, he might not die, but it's sort of like the bodies have begun to fall. I feel like it's like, all right, here we go.
I mean, you're certainly correct in my impression of this episode being that like very little happened outside of like we've watched threads form a knot, and now all we watched is everything get pulled tighter. I did feel like it's a bit of an abrupt about face for Lucia to say, yeah, I don't know how I feel about having sex for money. It's like, girl, you're the king of it. In this whole series, nobody's more comfortable with it than you. And now you're flipping around, okay? And then Mia's
That's
like
character development. They're
sure.
swapping. They're swapping because she's getting less and she's getting more.
Here's
maybe that could have been a little bit more elegantly handled.
The problem with Lucia is that the way they depicted it is actually the way that happens, right? Someone never displays their doubts. They have all the bravado in the world, but there's something been eaten at the back of their mind. And then one day they wake up and they're like, it's finally too much. And they admit it to their friend who's like, what are you talking about? You're amazing at this.
Yes.
So we saw the reality, but in fiction, you want to get a hint. You want to see that internal monologue. If it was a written story, you would have known, right?
I could be there for...
It was a little abrupt, even if it was realistic.
I could be there for one abrupt about face, but the same episode, Mia saying, I don't know, I've decided I want to have sex for piano lessons.
I feel like that one's more logical because Mia has been resisting, but sort of interested, but sort of resisting. And that's been like, she's fascinated with Lucia because Lucia can do the things that Mia doesn't feel like she can. And then the night with Cameron, you see her make the decision of like, oh, I guess I'll go for Ethan. Oh, Ethan's not into it. I guess I could go for Cameron too, and like that feels like it was the seeds were planted a little better.
Yes. Again, two abrupt about faces. We also see astonishingly poor for a couple that prides themselves on effective communication and being honest with each other. They went to some Three's Company levels of not communicating effectively with each other.
You talking about Ethan and Harper?
Yes.
But
it was agonizing.
Ethan, both of them ended up getting tainted by Cameron and his wife.
Correct.
Right? Like if this had never happened, Ethan and Harper would probably stay on smooth sailing, but because Ethan now has like a friend in Cameron and they've got their bro code.
Exactly.
And Harper knows that like, oh, well, these people, they play around. maybe Ethan's playing. And now I like that's a great on a dime turn in this episode. I think that's just her shutting down and processing everything and putting the walls up. It's great. Oh, and there's another. If we're talking about sudden changes, everybody kind of sudden changes in this episode, because we've got Albie, or is that what we want to talk about?
No, yeah, no. Albie gets
very motivated, very motivated. In
sidelined
fact,
the entire
two
time.
couples are explaining why the sudden changes are happening as they're happening at the bar. I thought that was a nice little scene.
Yeah. Even like Portia, just I don't know if it was the hair and makeup or what, but she looked night and day.
She looked super duper hot, super sexy, suave, in control, confident.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that is costuming, I think, because previously we'd seen her in overalls, shorts, and so on. Yeah, but now it's such, I don't know, it's the equivalent of the 1980s. Just take off your glasses. Oh, you're so pretty.
What do you think? I in a server I'm in, there was some question about the gay guys that the gay guys and Jack, the dangerous nephew, and what their whole deal is. Because I don't know exactly what their whole deal is. I feel like
Jack says they spend all their time at the Palazzo with a bunch of gay guys and rich old women. So there's sort of a vague hint that there's a serial need for Quentin to target rich old women. The logical conclusion would be that they try to get money out of them somehow.
Yeah.
Whether that there's a twist to that, whether there's a different reason they like rich old women or not. But the surface guess is like, oh, so they can bilk them from some money. Maybe it's outright fraud. Maybe it's just like preying on their sympathies and getting them to spend money on stuff for them. You know, could be any kind of level. But that seems to be the implication, is that Tanya is the latest in a line of rich women that they flatter incessantly in order to get something out of them.
Yeah, and I wonder if I could kind of imagine if that group was the protagonist of the story, about this group of you have flatterers, you have an older gentleman for hetero women, a younger gentleman for hetero women, and imagine a independently wealthy, super famous gay person or whatever. I would love to see the heist movie that is implied in everything we're seeing here.
Interesting.
Also, a lot of different nationalities and origins for some of these guys, right? You had the main guy who was English and his nephew, and then the kind of his bosom buddy seemed to be native Italian. But then they all
there's some Dutch. There was somebody who was from the Netherlands, I remember, said they were Dutch. So yeah, it's a international crew.
Albie.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. There's part of me that is enjoying, like, they did such a good job of making Albie so sanctimonious in his chiding of both his father and grandfather and all of the intergenerational adultery that he's from, and hand waving, explaining that it's so simple. It's just the patriarchy, and the only reason you love this movie is because of your primal blah 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 blah. How's it feel when you're the one left on the side? Oh, do you feel lonely? I really enjoyed it. Schadenfreude. Oh, Albie,
really?
You
Wow.
sanctimonious piece of work. Yes.
And
not so strong now, are you, Albie?
What's interesting is what he gets out of Lucia is kind of the energy he was giving to Portia in the previous episode, right? He kind of wanted to do the real courtship thing. He wanted to marry that girl, which was not what you do on vacation.
Not what you do on your first brunch.
Right. And so Lucia ended up being someone who could, fulfill really any fantasy, but for him, it was the slow rolling and falling in love with a hooker.
And Lucia, I got the strong impression that she's like, oh, well, I encouraged him, and now he's going to be alone. Well, that's rude. Let me do the polite thing.
This is the new Lucia.
Engage in third base activity on my way out.
He gave Lucia the gift of having a legitimate connection, right? When she's having her crisis of like, why am I doing this? It's not worth the money. It's eating away my soul. He showed up pure person that she could be like, yes, I will do the same thing I would do with anyone, but I will do it for the right reasons this time.
the right reasons being to make the girl you're interested in jealous.
Well, yeah, but not charging.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
doing it because of real feelings and all of that.
Cliff Singer in the chat asks if he knows she's a prostitute. Will she ask for money? I think the answer is no to both. I think that
he doesn't.
Interesting
that Grandpa has seen her naked. Dad has slept with her for money, and now Albie has a real connection with her.
Bryce is about to drop a hint, I think.
I watched the next week on, or it wasn't the next week on. It was like in the coming weeks, so it's not next week. It's going to be the next few weeks. But he's trying to make a wife out of that prostitute.
Oh no!
He's going to need some real Three's Company stuff.
That's consistent. That's consistent. Yep.
And so I'm very excited for the sitcom that's going to happen.
I'm more comfortable with the romantic side of things than the miscommunication side of things, because that's so frustrating to me.
Is it a miscommunication?
Oh no, the miscommunication between Harper and Ethan. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's straight up the two of them not talking correctly.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. And then we get look into the soul of Valentina. Valentina likes Isabella.
She's got some sort of flame for that little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And
another about face.
Yeah. Well, not an about face.
Well,
it was a wall, right? Valentina's character wouldn't let anyone know anything about her, and now she's dropping that wall a little for Isabella, and very clearly it's is Rocco coming on to you and making you uncomfortable in the workplace? Because if that happens, you shouldn't accept it.
Is there?
And Valentina looks like she is stepping towards being the one who might make Isabella uncomfortable.
Ethan and Harper and their quadrangle, I think, is the least change from episode 1, but almost everyone else we've talked about is exactly opposite of how they're presented just 3 episodes ago in episode 1. Valentina is no longer the harsh majordomo of the White Lotus.
Well, she still is. She just dropped it for Isabella, right?
Right. So but if you told us, oh no, she's going to be fawning over this girl and buying gifts for her, whatever. Mia and Lucia, polar opposite, exact switches. I think everybody has flipped. Except as a matter of fact, Grandpa is still kind of neutral and forgive me, impotent on the sidelines. But the dad is actually seeming to try to make a go.
He's trying to flip,
break his addiction. Albie, is the biggest flip, where it's like he's engaging in the exact activity that he was condemning.
Tanya's not flipped.
Well, she unloads in this episode. Right, or she lets go of all the Greg. I mean, it's more of a distraction.
Consistent, Tanya. Really,
yeah, that's true.
I can't wait for
which I accept.
Greg to come back.
I love that Tanya would be one of the ones that is solid.
Do we think Greg was cheating? Because it seemed like last week that we talked, everyone assumed he was definitely cheating because of.
I think he's definitely not at this point.
I did not think he was cheating, and I still don't.
Wow.
Yeah. Looking back on it, what did he do? He was whispering and said, "I love you." I think that was familial love for a family member. I think somebody had a crisis and they didn't communicate well. And he really will be back in 2 days, or I guess 1 day or whatever.
The hint is in the previously on when they show Greg saying, "This just happens in marriages. I've been married 4 times."
Who was the fourth one?
You. That was such a great moment.
but the thing that it's hinting is that he has other families, which means probably children, which means someone else he could say, "I love you" to, that is not a cheating situation. And
possibly
that he knows
embarrassing
how important
enough that
it is to do a grand gesture at this point, and might be planning one as a surprise for Tanya.
Oh my God, is this going to end up being a surprise party at the end? It's like,
I don't know.
That would be funny.
That would be pretty wild. Yes, and also, I can imagine any number of embarrassing scenarios where he wouldn't feel comfortable or not yet at the moment that he could, especially because I think, and I haven't finished season 1, but it seems like Greg is not nearly as wealthy as Tanya. And
no, he's a government employee. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because they meet at the other White Lotus in Hawaii.
Okay.
And he's like traveling by himself.
Wait, but didn't they mention the prenup or something?
They got a prenup when they got married.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Tanya made him sign a prenup so he couldn't inherit her wealth.
Yeah, because he's probably well off, but she's the one with $500 million.
Yeah, I don't think he's got money problems, but he's not in the same tier, the same tax bracket as Tanya. Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to express is the possibility that there's some problem that if he shares it with Tanya, he knows that she will volunteer to take care of it, and it's his mess that is ugly for whatever reason. And wants to,
I can see that being like a family member is in trouble and he doesn't want to burden Tanya with it. That's a possibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
maybe, but I don't know. I'm just caught up on all the other things that would be little red herrings, like their failed attempts at intimacy and their arguments in the early episodes.
But that's why they did Greg's like, this is just what happens in marriages, and this is going to be his attempt to get past that.
I don't know. Someone's got to die. We can't forget someone's gonna die. Who's gonna?
I think it's more than one. Remember, don't forget that Rocco alluded to multiple bodies.
Ooh, hold on. I had entirely assumed that it was a couple, but I like the idea much better, and I'm rooting ? For it to be 2 independent killings that happen to be the same night that are in no way connected.
Okay, that could be. I know you're not watching it week by week with the first season anymore, but you should check out the first season, especially just to find
to familiarize myself with the vocabulary of how things unfold, or
just so you see some of the scale and some of the movements that happen with the murder. Because I don't know, Tom, this is not a spoiler, but I would say that the murder is very low key in season 1. There's a lot of tension, but it happens very quickly and very quietly.
It's sort of a disappointment if this had just been a murder mystery, but because it's not, you're like, I should be mad at this, but I don't care. In fact, I'm almost glad that it's that way. Yeah.
It's a good show.
Okay. I'll have to wait.
All right. That's The White Lotus, season 2, episode 4. Let's talk about Rick and Morty, season 6, episode 7, Full Meta Jack Rick. Written by Brian Brushwood.
So you guys said this, and I was kind of surprised.
What?
Joseph Campbell was a character in this episode.
Okay.
The only person I've heard talk more about Joseph Campbell than you is Joseph Campbell, maybe? I don't know.
Even then, he didn't say that much about it in this episode. I texted, just before you guys texted me, I had texted Justin saying, I can't wait to find out if you thought this was the best Harmontown episode or the worst Rick and Morty episode, because it's almost a 20-plus minute apology for last season's Story Train episode, where they keep on hammering on it. They bring it up, and if they're going to go meta, they go full meta. I loved it. It was silly. I'm not going to lie. I'm no slouch at knowing some of the fundamental beats of narrative storytelling, but there were moments that I thought, well, clearly I have some graduate student work to do because they're making references to writing tropes that I have no idea what they're talking about.
The beautiful thing that I realized is that the reason I hear you talk about Joseph Campbell in storytelling and narrative, I'm not trying to say the only reason, but a large part of it is informed by Harmontown.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so Dan Harmon has fed you information that you've incorporated into your opinions. And Dan Harmon now took that exact same information and put it in Rick and Morty. So it's really not... It's like a magic trick, right? It really makes perfect sense. This is just the same wellspring of information coming from 2 different sources, but a really fun way to experience that, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it falls a little bit short of the episode with the sidekick characters, the parasite that kept inventing other characters that people remember.
The Mr. Poopy Butthole episode.
Yes, exactly. This is thematically close to it, but I think a little bit less fun than that one. However, as far as high concept, all the way crawled inside your own butt, Man, starting with a character named Previous Leon and going to, as they rattle off, I gotta remember all of the names of the self-aware six, including the fact that there is no sixth, but what there is there's
the sixth is
there's
you.
Brett Kahn, and then the note Morty gives saying, "Wouldn't Rhett's a name?" And he's like, "It's always been Rhett Kahn. That's always been my name."
No, Brett. Oh no, yeah, Rhett. Okay,
because it starts.
He changes it to Rhett Kahn. Yeah.
I especially love the character who they spell out the moment he says he has the ability to make anyone the protagonist, and then something ball of energy strikes somebody, and I'm like, buckle up, this is gonna be great.
The mountain of trials that they are directed away from, the throwaway line of, I always like a refusal of the quest.
That's what made me text Brian. That was what made me text Brian. I was like, he refused the call.
Refused the call.
They did refuse the call. And also, it's like there's a moment that a character's, they get in the weeds, and it literally is a bush that says the word weeds across it.
Yeah, this episode accomplished almost nothing, really, but it was super fun.
It also served as a bit of, I assume, an inoculation. I think what they bought themselves is 5 more episodes to round out the season where they don't have to get meta on anything, and everything can be a standalone adventure. Mm-hmm. And we can maybe get back to the original question set up in the very first episode when they reestablished all the canonical iterations of each character in the core group and established that the main villain was going to be Cool Rick down the road. I liked it a lot. It was very silly.
You think they're going to go away from that?
I think that once you binge on this particular dopamine drug of choice, that you buy yourself a few episodes of not making meta jokes for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, but okay. Yeah, I mean, like I think they're gonna finish that story out.
Oh yeah. No, that's what I'm saying is they get to go back to the procedural one-armed man.
And it sounded
constantly.
More like you.
Yeah. So sorry
that they were dropping
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this series. The serial stuff is fine. That's fine. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I agree too. But then again, what a treasure that Rob Schraub episode, the standalone horror mystery of the Night People was.
They're all good. It's a good show. I don't.
It is a good show. I'm not saying it's not.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
It's a very good show for a large number of people who like to poke holes in things, because it's a game between Harmon and his team and the viewers about countering the hole punching in a way that delights the audience, because what they want is, not to have their expectation met, but to have it countered and subverted, and that's super fun.
And
so
to be honest,
Rick and Morty is probably the most genius type of that show that I've ever seen.
There's a little bit of that Bryce, you and I engage in as we're shooting, because as we're shooting, we'll sometimes stop and then we say, what are the comments going to say? They're going to say this continuity thing, or they're going to say, you stated it this way, and what they mean is this. And so this is that writ large taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
Ricked large.
Oh, God, you're punching up my own.
Did you guys get your Rick plush, by the way?
I did. I checked over there at the Rick plush. Okay. Unfortunately, it was not available in this reality.
They did a very 50% heavier.
They did a great bit by... maybe it was when he was
they were talking about story-train.
Yeah. Like, no one puts dashes in it. We should have got the website. And so that just had me like, oh, they're gonna say a website.
Yep,
they're gonna say a website, and it's good. The hair's not right at all.
I mean, that also a plot point.
Right
Realistic bald spot. What else is there to say about Rick and Morty 607?
I will say that, I buy the episodes a season at a time. So I was watching it this morning on Amazon.com. I don't know what's up with all y'all streaming services, but you know what? If you're going to put an end tag, and if you know there's an end tag, then maybe midway through the credits, don't try to trick me into watching something other than that. Maybe not load up some other show, especially on this episode where they had a whole segment about a character called End Tag Man.
Yeah. That is Rick and Morty season 6, episode 7. Let's talk about 2521, season 1, episode 3, shall we? Brian, was there, and Bryce too, I guess, on this particular question. I had said not a lot happens in this episode. I think more happens in this next episode. Did that prove true to you?
Yes. This, similar to one of the other shows we're talking about, it just felt like the knot was getting more snarled, and now it's getting a little bit, it's requiring more mental effort for me to keep a map of who knows who from what. The big beats are that, we ended the previous episode with sort of a promise between our two main characters that they're going to be light and happy together. In this case, we find out more about previous histories. We find out that the same person, it's so funny because like when I'm watching the show, I can keep all the names straight, and then 20 minutes passes and I see a bird, and next thing I know, I don't remember any of the names.
Sure.
Well, it's Hee-do is our fencer,
right?
Main character. It's Yejin is the older guy, son of the bankrupt, and then it's Yurim. Yurim is the gold medal winner.
Right. But now we also have, what's the name of the person who lives in the house that he's renting from?
Yes, and I'm blanking on her name. What's her name?
Okay. Anyway, we're deep enough in it. It continues to be good. I watched this episode again at 1.5 speed, and I'm glad I did, because it takes what are normally just serviceable dubs and make them actually, they all feel natural to me.
You're still doing the English dubs?
Yeah, but I can't. I think next week will be the one that I may go full subs and see what that's like.
Yeah. I also agreed that way more stuff happens in this episode. I actually went back and watched the second episode again, and I did like it more the second time. But I thought this one was great. I was glad to see. I was glad to. I guess I'm the one thing I'm having trouble with is the cast, is the larger ensemble, or as the ensemble continues to grow, because I think I'm reading, especially because these are so long, I'm reading these as like movies, and I'm expecting like a movie's worth of story and characters. But this is definitely a huge season of a soap opera cast, and so I totally co-sign what you're saying, Brian. Just a little bit of trying to keep up with folks, but I think they do a good job of like hair and clothing and stuff.
Yeah.
I think you've hit all of the main characters now. Not that there won't be some new characters as different characters do different things, but the characters you need to really know and care about have all been introduced to you. So you're at capacity now.
Well, we did get, I believe, the introduction of a new character with that
Pretty Boy.
Pretty Boy's been around.
We got him last week, but we got a lot more of him because
he actually
saved Hee-do so he could go hang out with Yurim in the hall during punishment. Right?
And Pretty Boy is increasingly becoming cute to me. I like that. But it was weird to see our gold medalist suddenly turn over and show her belly to someone who's a senior saying, I thought we agreed, no practicing. What are you doing? And I'm not entirely sure what I read that as, and either correct or you don't have to correct if it's better for me to keep on watching. What I read that as is, it's funny how somebody could be a champion in one arena, but she's still somebody lower on the totem pole in another arena. As I'm fond of pointing out, if you grew up in a small town and graduate, somebody may be a valedictorian on the stage, but you still remember when they pooped their pants in 3rd grade. And so do they.
Well, and Yurim kind of explains it to Hee-do. She's like, look, they're not right, but it's just easier to do what they say and then, figure out your own way. It's the way I've been doing it, and I'm a gold medalist. Like, you don't have to waste your time and energy on them. Just let them bluster. And Hee-do is like, no, but it's not right, and I don't want to put up with it anymore. So you have two different approaches to that, where you have the senior who pushes you around, and Yurim is like, it's really not that bad. You're only going to make it worse if you complain. And Hee-do is like, it is that bad, and it's wrong. And that is kind of a spotlight on those two characters, where Yurim is like very practical and Hee-do is very idealistic.
Dad plot. Dad plot was the best plot, and it opened with the miscommunication, and then everything got resolved, and then they didn't leave the dangling aspect of like whether or not Hee-do would feel terrible about it forever, and then they closed that singularity. That was great. I enjoyed that.
I was very glad that we didn't have to wait for him to come back. Yep. Oh my God, I was so ready for it. I was so ready to just be like, okay, we won't see him till the end of the show.
It's one of the things I love about this series is that they do those things where you're like, oh, so it's going to be a cliffhanger. And then they're like, no. We just wanted to use this to show how much Hee-do cares about Yi-jin and how much he cares about her, that he goes back and finds, when he sees her and it's like, hey, let me stop you from looking. And going back to I know you're not watching it with your kids anymore, but going back to the worries about the grooming and all of that, I think it's also key, if you're still thinking about that he grabs her by the wrist when they go running. He sees her as a friend, it's not the kind of story where they'd hold hands there and then that would be the moment. That's not happening.
Well, and it seems like if anything, the characters are very, very sensitive to that age dynamic, and I think that's
right.
I suspect literally going to be the point of the full season. We also got at the Doogie Howser ending a clear indication of who's on the other line on the chat. It was implied that it was the boy before, but even then, I remember thinking like, well, that's not 100% clear. This time, it seems like it's 100% clear. She's been talking to the gold medalist the whole time, right?
Yes, they did. So they did a I think almost unforgivable fake out where they show her typing and then they cut to Yi-jin getting up from his computer, but what they didn't show you was what was on his screen.
Right.
So it was a very clear misdirection. And
we call it lying.
No.
In the next scene, he says, I was just setting up an interview. And so that is the fact that says he wasn't chatting with a friend. He was using the computer to print out his resume for the interview. But it is tantamount to lying, the way they cut that. This time you see Yurim typing in,
right.
You see the interface, you see the screen name. So they didn't leave any doubt this time.
I will hold out that even when they showed it, I was like, well, that's strongly implied in episode 2. Boy, Rick, I can't believe I was about to say we're only 3 episodes in, and then I remember they're an hour and a half each practically. But I remember last episode thinking, well, that's strongly implied. Don't know if I entirely buy it, at least not on episode 2.
No, it's smart. And of course, it sets up what I think is a clever little thing, which is when Yurim and Hee-do aren't competing to be fencers and don't have the dynamic of I still hold your early success against you. They get along great. They just have to not know who each other is. And, so what does that mean? How is that going to play out if it plays out in real life?
Yeah.
Also, I just adore that they're doing a chat, really an online relationship, in the late 90s.
Which was
good retro fun.
Which was a thing, and it was not nearly as popular and as obvious and as natural and as normal a thing as being in a Discord group is now. But it certainly was.
We also got sorry, Bryce. What?
Just a last thing on the chat thing, with it being Yurim on the other side. Do we like that better than the possible branch of Hee-do, I don't know, meeting someone weird online? Because there's a bit in the first few episodes where you're like, she's really into the online thing, but this is 1998. That was not the online it is now.
Right.
And so I kind of thought that's where
that's your dog on the internet back then.
Yeah. Do we like it better that it's just in her social circle than some external thing?
Given that already by episode 3, my mental map of relationships is getting strained, I'm okay with everything being a closed room mystery, especially because we know that this was produced during COVID times. And in fact, there's a bit of a nod to that at the very beginning during the physical therapy. Boy, it kind of breaks my heart to see our protagonist become so bitter as a grown-up, becoming everything that she didn't want to be. I don't know.
And you're also starting to see the mom, Hee-do's mom, being the opposite of the way she was to Hee-do, to the granddaughter, being supportive and caring, and Hee-do having a scene where she's like, "You never not that nice to me. Why are you being so nice to my daughter?"
Yeah.
That's a very specific gripe you're still holding, sweetheart.
We also got a scene with the younger brother where Yijin stands up for him, and the younger brother asks him not to.
I rather like the casual way that he dealt with it. He's like, what was I supposed to do? He's like, I don't know, nothing. I mean, seems like I'm a kid who has to learn to deal with those things.
They're just gonna make it worse for me when you're not around. So, I should probably figure out my own way. It was kind of the implication.
Yeah. No, he was definitely a rock star.
Anything about the coach this episode that struck you? I can't remember.
No, although no,
qualifying stuff was.
We get the whole actually, you know what? It was a good little comedic beat where she's like, "Well, here's what it's going to take to get me to work on a Saturday. You're gonna
that's right.
You're gonna run up a mountain, bring me spring water. I'm gonna spit half of it out, but don't bring me tap water because I'll know the difference." I dug all that.
You want to train how early in the morning? All right, well then you're coming to my house and bringing me.
And you're gonna wake me up.
I was expecting her to be like, okay, you want to start at 6? Cool. Well, you start at your house at 6, and then you just run around for a few hours. And
that's basically what she's doing. Like, wake me up, and then I'll get started with my day and meet you 2 hours later at the actual fencing place while you do all of these crazy things that may or may not be useful in any way, but at least we'll keep you busy.
It is some straight up Mr. Miyagi stuff, right?
Totally. Yeah. It really is. Let's see. I think that covers all the little pieces.
We also have the previous stardom as a radio DJ that.
Right.
That our lead male has.
Yeah, and the daughter of the landlady, realizing that she's been very dismissive of him as a tenant, but now she realizes he is her senior.
There was a great kind of stylistic choice of doing more of the anime thing, the wah, 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 turn around.
It was great because it took me a minute to understand what she was asking. Like, what she's doing okay, what? That was great.
That's good stuff. So you're in for another week.
Yeah, I think so. I gave up the ghost just in the middle of talking. I realized I talk about next week, and so no mystery there. Yeah.
Anything else on 25-21?
It's good.
I reserve the right to continue to watch it at 1.5 speed. It's surprisingly good.
No rules about that. No rules against it. That is 25-21 on Netflix, season 1, episode 3. Next week, we'll be doing the same lineup again. 25-21, episode 4, with the White Lotus, season 2, episode 5, and Rick and Morty, season 6, episode 8. You get these episodes earlier if you're a patron, so become a patron if you're not already. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next week.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.